back on another exciting episode of Starfleet So Hail, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Today we're focused on Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 10, The Last Generation. Bum, 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 bum. Sorry, I had to do it. I love that Titan theme. Something's going on with the stream. Oh, it's because I have to hit the live. Okay.
It's because of the plushy Gorn.
We are live. My monitor over here wasn't live, so that's why I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if we're broadcasting, but we are, so that's good. We're broadcasting. Hello, audience, and hello, wonderful panel. I think there's a couple, maybe there might be some more people popping in a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and get started with this fine crew. We we kind of have a Enterprise bridge situation going on here. We just need who's this? Let me see. That's our 7th person. There we go. We've got an Enterprise bridge situation going on. You guys up there are behind the wooden thing.
Ah, I see.
No, okay, no. Actually,
that's the official name. The wooden thing.
Like, the wooden thing, and then
great recreation of the wooden thing. By
right,
the way.
And then actually, Ken, you're Picard, and it's perfect because you got like
I'm bald.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you trying to say?
Yes, I'll be Counselor Troy, and Braxton will be Commander Riker.
I like that. That's great.
Who's Worf?
So
make it so held.
Jesse, you're obviously Dr. Crusher, by the way. Just say.
Yes. I'm at the science station. I'm already doing my thing.
Right. I like it. I'm in support ops too, just trying to keep things.
Yeah.
Always
I'm like this lower decker of the week on the bridge, wondering what I'm doing.
There you go.
You're Lieutenant J. Toddy, you're Lieutenant J.
Yeah, I have my friend Gorn with me, like for emotional support.
Right, the plushy Gorn.
There we go.
Right.
Well, it's nice to see you guys here. Let's going. Before we go into the episode summary, Toddy says he has something to say, and he was gonna just interrupt, but he was kind enough to say that he has something to say. So
I didn't want to scare you.
Toddy, go ahead, say your piece.
Okay. I know that Star Trek: The Next Generation and Star Trek as a whole has been something immense for Starfleet Sahel. It has shaped many aspects of his life, and it has been very important. And like Star Trek has been important to him, since far longer than I've known him. But I came to know him with the TNG discussions. I was lucky enough and privileged enough to be able to do the TNG discussions with him. At the time, they were pre-recorded; they weren't live. It was a whole thing. I loved it. And I know how much those TNG discussions mean to him. And I know that, like, the thing that comes up often is, how should I put this? Keeping moments in time. Like, what do we say for posterity, right?
Right.
We like to, I'm getting emotional myself. I don't know why. Yeah, this whole show is about, like, emphasizing and really... putting our thumb on like special moments. And when Picard came back, or when Picard was announced as a show, that was a special moment for you, and I know that. And we are now talking about the final episode in this show. We will talk about it again, I'm sure. I'm sure you're going to do like a whole season discussion, and I'm sure that Picard as a show and as a character will come back countless times. But I did just want to, for posterity, and for like this show, make a big deal about the fact that not only was this show so like meaningful to you, but also you actually got to go to the premiere. You got a picture with Sir Patrick Stewart himself. It's like a culmination of such an adventure coming true. And even though I wasn't there in the beginning of your adventure when you were also young and discovering TNG as it was coming out, it was such a joy to be part of this adventure and to share in it with you. And I thank you for welcoming me into this to this great family and this council of Trekkies that you have now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Council of Trekkies. I like that.
So yeah,
Toddy.
I just wanted to make a point of saying that this is a moment in the Starfleet Sahel podcast.
That's very
sweet. Here.
All right,
here.
Enough of this like sentimental stuff. Oh my gosh, my friend Allie's here. So happy to be able to tune into this, even for just a little bit. Greetings from Daystrom Institute in Okinawa. Yes, Allie, it means so much that you're in the audience and you said hi. Thank you so much. And oh my gosh, Toddy, I don't know. Now you threw me off. So because you did that, I'm going to switch over to Stan. who got to
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
the opposite of the premiere, the finale screening in IMAX. And so yeah, tell us about that. Hey Michelle, I'm so glad you came.
Just be hanging out over here in my corner.
Nobody puts Michelle in a corner. You know what? I'm gonna put
a lot
you
of
right
people
over.
will tonight.
Not me. Go ahead, Stan. Tell us about the finale event. Did anyone else go? By the way, did anyone else get to go to the IMAX thing? No? Okay, great, Stan. You're gonna tell us all about it.
Well, I lucked out. A Trek Twitter friend who goes to these kinds of events fairly often already had an account with, it wasn't IMAX, it was GoFobo or something like that, and so was one of shockingly few people, given everybody I knew trying to get, who was able to get tickets, and he very kindly offered to let me be his plus one, and it was incredible. We went 3 hours early because we started seeing lines form at other locations, and I thought, well, I'm in LA, there's no way that there isn't going to be a line, and if we stuck with the original plan, we definitely would not have gotten in. So I'm glad we went early. They did a screening before ours that was I think Emmy specific, but like a 4-year consideration. So if you weren't on the council or whatever the Emmy voter commission is called, I just moved here, I don't know the terms, but it was specifically for industry people, and they had most of the primary cast and Alex Kurtzman, Terry Metalis, and the energy was palpable because we were first staged outside next to the dumpsters. It's like put the nerds over there, but then when there was room inside, there were they had 2 queues going. Just in the distance, you could see the theater, and it was the energy, like I said, was palpable because just seeing 400 feet away Sir Patrick Stewart walking by, and then Jonathan Frakes, and Jerry Ryan, like all of them, is like losing my mind, even though I was not going to get anywhere near them. But once the Q&A was done, they reset it for the showing that I went to at what was supposed to be 9 ended up being more like, I think, like 9:45 or 10, something like that. They had some of the costumes set up. The detail on those costumes, like, I don't think it's possible to get it on camera, especially seeing it so close. The field jacket, I am so thrilled for the one that I ordered. I don't care if it doesn't look all that accurate. Although the vendor that Trev found, I know does great work. And so I thought we were just going to watch it, right? But then out comes Terry Metalis, and then he introduced in the audience one of the ensigns who was in the episode was there with us, but then brought up Ensign LaForge and Captain Shaw themselves, and they talked about how much fun the show was and how they were excited to be in IMAX because this was a labor of love for the fans. And I was getting misty-eyed and trying to hold myself together. I am not a public crier, and that's for me and my therapist to work out another time. But I was definitely feeling it before. And then the show itself was incredible. They showed episode 9 and then went right into 10. So I didn't see the new fanfare with the Enterprise D, which was incredible, until I got home and watched it again. But I spent an hour today looking at different speaker options for my TV, just to, like, I know I'm not going to get an IMAX setup, but being surrounded by the beeps of the consoles, the music, the visuals were just incredible. In the finale itself, like skipping ahead a little bit, but like when the Enterprise D swoops in at the last second, like the scale of it on an IMAX screen, it like, I was fucking chills when they first introduced the Borg. Like, I've seen this already, but seeing the Borg cube and hearing "We are the Borg" all around you, I was almost terrified. I was like, are there actually Borg here? It is incredible. The attention to detail was epic. Like, they truly made it to be a movie, and it's a shame. Like, Sohail knows I have many rants just primed and ready for the brand management, but this one was on IMAX and others. But it is truly a shame that more people can't see it in this format, because it was truly meant for the big screen. It was beautiful and amazing.
That's really, really cool. Any insights that the panel gave that you want to share and tell us about?
So yes. So they filmed the panel prior to our screening, but then we stayed to watch it. In fact, it's funny enough, the only thing that was bad about the experience for me is I had to pee right as the finale was starting. If it had kicked in 5 minutes earlier, it would have been perfect. I'm like, all right, I already saw this, I can go. So the entire episode, I was just like on the edge of my seat for many reasons, including those we will all talk about. Hopefully not my bladder from anyone other than myself, and we can just move on.
So for you, resistance was not futile.
Resistance was not futile.
Yeah.
There was
Right.
no way in any universe that I was missing even a second of that experience. So the panel was really good. I did dip out to go to the bathroom and then come back, but some really cool insights. It turns out Todd Stashwick is neighbors with Walter Koenig, and so that's how they were able to make that cameo happen. Some other pieces that I've learned about, like they just like give Terry more money. Like I was going to talk about this later. Like I really wish they had 2 more episodes to let some more things linger and give us more time and more. Like I just want so much more from what they showed us. But they did the voice recording at Walter's house apparently, because unfortunately they just didn't have the budget to like do costume and lights and a different set for a president's office. But it was wonderful. And I've read since, and they touched on this, like there were a lot of things that they wanted to do that they just didn't have time for, the budget, some COVID restrictions and travel and availability. They did want to include obviously Janeway. That's why she was name dropped. They wanted to include Soji. We've talked about this on these things. They wanted to include Harry Kim, because sure, why not? I would love to see a still ensign just for the hilarity of it. Or a Captain Kim. That would be beautiful too. But why I came on backstage and screamed "Ro lives" is apparently the original intention was to show Ro and Tuvok rescued at the same time, but budget and whatnot. So now that I've teased all of the stuff we didn't get, sorry to be a bummer, but it reminded me of how, like I mentioned earlier, that nothing is definitive, and even in Star Trek, even something you see on screen isn't necessarily definitive, because, like, who knows? Rose out there. Certain relationships may or may not still be going. We'll get into it.
Yeah, just look at the very last scene. Nothing's definitive.
We're gonna get into it. We're getting into it. All right, so let's do a little episode summary. I'm gonna try to make this as quick as possible. I'm sorry if it's not quick, because sometimes I get. But Toddy promised he was gonna rein me in. Also, Toddy promised that we were gonna stick to an hour and 15 minutes. He's gonna get hard on me at an hour and 15 minutes and be like, "You gotta stop! You gotta stop!"
I get this job. I get this job where I have to be the mean one. And then
now that I know how much you love me, I'm totally gonna give you all the jobs.
Wow. Do you even hear yourself?
Oh, that doesn't sound. Yeah, that's a good one.
We'll cut your recap short if it goes on for too long.
If it gets too long. All right. 35 years ago.
That's enough.
And now moving on.
All right. So we continue from last week. Basically, the crew gets the Enterprise and they go to where the source of the signal is, which is at Jupiter. And at Jupiter, they discover a big ass Borg cube, I think it was like 5 or 6 Borg cubes combined, with like antennas sticking out everywhere, and it's hiding in Jupiter's big red dot. And then they immediately start doing their cool TNG Enterprise D-Bridge routine of scanning and figuring out what's going on, and they're trying to find Jack, and Data's pulling up one thing, and Beverly's able to localize him and stuff. And then Jean-Luc, when they find him, Jean-Luc's like, okay, I'm gonna go down there. and he takes Riker and Worf, and basically Data kind of protests and's like, oh, I want to go down there. You could tell, I don't know, like I could tell Beverly was like not happy with it initially, but she kind of understood her or whatever, that she needed to be here on the bridge as well. Because obviously she wants to get her son back and make sure he's safe. And if she had gone down there, that Borg Queen wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes, I can tell you that. But anyways, they go down there, and the mission is that Worf and Riker need to go find the transmitter, where the location of the transmitter, in order to disable it. And Jean-Luc is going to go and try to save Jack, and the crew on the Enterprise are going to try to like help, support from the air, if you will. By the way, I forgot to mention, because it was already mentioned, about President Anton Chekhov and his dire message in the beginning, which was really, really cool. And right from the beginning, like a nice kind of like, it was somber, but it was also a nice moment of an homage to a character and an actor that's beloved in Star Trek, Anton Yelchin. So that was pretty cool. And just to have Walter Koenig get another moment in Star Trek is pretty cool too. Anyways, going back to the Borg cube, they figure it out. Jean-Luc finds Jack. He and the Borg Queen start to have like words, and it's the same stuff as always. She's always like, Jean-Luc, I want you, but I don't. And he's like, I hate you. And then and then she's like, now watch your futures end. And so all this kind of stuff is going on. Meanwhile, the Borg are becoming active, and Riker and Worf are fighting them off. They figure out where the transmitter is, and so they see the route to get to it, and Geordi's like, we can't do this, like not even my daughter, I love that moment, by the way, not even my daughter can like navigate us through this. And Data's like, I can do it, just trust me, I've got a gut feeling. So they go with Data's gut, and damn does he fly the Enterprise through there like an animal. It was amazing. It looked kind of like, sometimes it looked like when you're playing a video game of like flying through stuff. And yes, we'll go ahead and address it right now. Yes, it's very, reminiscent of Star Wars, going through the Death Star. But I feel like something about the Enterprise D and the Borg cube just made it different for me. Like it was different enough. And I think they were cognizant of the similarities, and maybe even doing a few like little homages.
Star Trek's been around for nearly 60 years. I think they're allowed to do one trench run adjacent.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, exactly. So they're doing this trench run, and unfortunately, Jack. By the way, for those of you who've seen BSG, I haven't confirmed this yet, but I'm pretty sure that Jack is saying some lines that the people who are connected to the battles, to the Cylon ships are saying. Like some of the things he was saying sounded very, very familiar to that. But he's like the control unit, basically.
By your
he's
command.
Yeah, but like you remember in the new BSG, like they were like those guys that were in those white tubs, like
the hybrids,
like Anders, the hybrids. Thank you. I was trying to remember what. Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on, but anyways, Picard's pleading with the, not pleading, but just kind of like arguing with the Queen, disconnecting Jack. But she's like, if you disconnect him now, he'll just be flooded with this information, and he'll go insane. Only he can disconnect himself, and so in a surprise move. Well, before that, the crew on the Enterprise get to the transmitter, and they realize that they're gonna have to blow it up, but there's only gonna be a minute. It's gonna create a chain reaction that blows up. It's gonna create a chain reaction that blows up the whole Borg cube. So they'll only have a minute to save the crew, but the crew are in the dead zone, as it's known, where sensors can't detect them or anything like that. So that's the problem. Meanwhile, back at Earth Space Dock, Earth Space Dock is brutalized. It is torn apart, like constant phaser fire from like, what was it? Stan, how many ships did you count last time? It was like 260 something ships.
265
right?
Was my count, but I'm sure that was not all of them.
Yeah, that was an insane sequence. I've never seen so many phasers just firing, and like all the explosions and the torpedoes. It was crazy. But Seven and Rafi and some other crew members, including Dr. Oak, which we haven't seen in a long time, managed to retake the bridge and do it in this like really clever way. They have these like phasers that have like the capability of like transporting you to another location, and so they trap them in the transporter room, the Borgified crew, and they're able to then re-engage the cloaking device, and they do these like crazy kind of like surprise attack runs to just try to distract them for a little while to buy the folks on the Enterprise D, which they realize through long range sensors that they're trying to do something. So we go back to the D, and so yeah, they make the decision to go ahead and do it. Geordi, the tear, that was the first fire that I've ever heard with tears coming out of a character's eyes. Usually it's like this like fire, but you could see Geordi, it gives me chills just thinking about it. Anyways, Geordi orders the fire, Dr. Crusher does it, and the thing starts to explode, and they're racing out of there, and in that moment, Jean-Luc decides, he's like, I've been staying away from the Borg for all these years. I've been running from you, but not anymore. And so to connect with Jack, literally, he connects to the he connects to the Borg collective, and they go into this like Borg space, and we see Jack totally blissed out in there. He's like in his like super happy spot. He's like in perfection, basically. This construct or whatever that's within the Borg consciousness. And he can hear everyone's voices, and there's like all this harmony and stuff like that. And then he sees his father, and they have a moment where they connect, where Jean-Luc basically says like, how he's similar to Jack. And it wasn't until meeting Jack that he actually realized what was missing in his life. And then he gives him a big hug, and that's enough. It wakes Jack up from this like thing, and Jack disconnects himself, and he yanks the thing out of Jean-Luc's neck. And we see Riker and Worf, and today is a good day to die. And Riker does this little moment where he gives out a little thought, and he says, "I'll see you soon, Imzadi. I'll be waiting for you with our son." And so then that's enough. She feels him, and then Counselor Troy gets on the controls, and she's like, "I know where he is." And then they go, and the Enterprise does the thing that Stan was talking about earlier, where it just like swoops in and beams them aboard, and then gets the hell out of it. They boldly get the hell out of there. The Borg Queen screams and yells, and she's totally totally destroyed again. Hopefully forever this time. Hopefully forever. And the Enterprise gets out. We see a really heartwarming, touching reunion on the bridge with the family. And then they join and they're able to, so that's able to stop the whole assault on Earth, which was about to happen because they had destroyed or at least crippled Space Dock. And just before there was a confrontation on the Titan bridge, they snap out of it, the Borgified crew. And that was another touching scene where Sydney kind of realizes she's got this phaser pointed at 7 of 9, and she was about to like start a phaser fight, and she starts to break down, and 7 hugs her. And so that's it. They solve the issue, and then we spend some time, kind of catching up with everyone. We get a really touching moment with 7 and Tuvok, and he promotes her, and he shows her Shaw's last, I guess, what do you call it, like a review, right? And that broke my heart. Yeah, that broke my heart, because I had a feeling he was antagonizing her on purpose, and it looks like he was. So that was like really touching. What else do we get? We get we get the poker scene at 10 forward with a beautiful reading by Sir Patrick Stewart from Caesar.
Raffi and Worf.
We get Raffi, and oh my god, that's a great moment too. We get Data and Counselor Troy.
We get the 10 endings, Return of the King.
Yeah, we did. We got it. And then, of course, we get this moment a year later where they're saying goodbye to the they're just kind of like reflecting. They're on the bridge of the Enterprise. The D is now placed beautifully in one of the docking rings, and is now on display for people to come and visit. And then Jean-Luc Beverly, who's now Admiral and head of Starfleet medical again,
yes.
And Jack are like they're escorting young Jack to his first assignment, and everyone's like, "Oh look, it's the Titan," and then Jack's in the know, so he's like, "Whatever." And then the shuttle kind of sweeps up above the saucer section, and we see that it is in fact renamed to be the Enterprise NCC 1701G, and so Jack is assigned a special baby Nepo position on the Enterprise bridge as the counselor to the
Truly is the nepotism chair.
the nepotism chair.
Yeah.
Baby Nepo. Did I get that phrase right? I see it online, but I've never used it till today. And then, of course, now we see Captain Seven, and Rafi looks to be the first officer. So they get going. They leave space dock, and just as we're about to hear Seven of Nine's warp catchphrase, the camera cuts. We get that's when we get the scene in 10 Forward with the crew, and they do all that, and they play poker just like they did in All Good Things, except this time it doesn't go out into space. I like the variation, by the way, that they did on it. And then we get credits, and then we get Q. He's returned, and now he's interested in Jack. So yeah, that's it. That's the whole episode, and I'll just say my little opening statement, and then I'll let you guys kind of say yours. But all in all, Star Trek Picard season 3 has just been a true gift for this TNG lover. As Toddy had said, I started my Star Trek discussion series at The Next Generation, not because I do love it the most, because it's the show that I spent my formative years and modeled my personality after, and it helped me navigate through the workplace. And I love the original series, but I feel home on the Enterprise D, and I feel home with these characters, you know what I mean? And so
he doesn't hear himself. He doesn't
hear himself.
What do you mean?
You feel at home on the D. Carry on.
Anyways, yes, I do feel at home in the
with the
yes
D.
in the D. In
just
the
let
D.
it go. Keep going.
Okay. Anyway,
try again. Do it again. Let's find a worse one. Keep digging.
On board.
Throughout this journey, and talking with friends like you guys and everything, we've been through ups and downs, and some of us more than others, just with our expectations for the show and stuff like that. And so it's gonna take me a while to kind of reconcile that. Probably when I watch it again now that all the anticipation and anxiety of what's coming next week is over, I'll be able to kind of look at it in a different way. But I have to say that for me personally, they stuck the landing. It was a beautiful send-off. Nemesis was not the send-off I wanted. It was just another adventure. I wanted another adventure after that, and it was great. It was, all pound for pound, all in all, it was just pretty spectacular. It gave me all the feels. It gave me a lot of juicy things to think about, all these characters. And I would argue that, leaving certain things vague, not just with Dr. Crusher and Jean-Luc's relationship, but a lot of things throughout the show, leaving it vague is kind of exciting, because I'm really hoping that all this kind of this interest that's renewed in this crew and this cast will lead to more things. And I was talking to Toddy about this today, but why not have more streaming movies like what they're doing with Section 31? So there's a lot of possibilities on the horizon. So I'm pretty excited, because there's things to follow up on from this that other writers or other shows can do. So yeah, I loved it. All in all, I'm gonna just go ahead and say that it's a 50 out of 10 for me. I'm just give my rating now, so get it out of the way. Why don't you go next, everybody? Why don't you go next, Braxton? You don't have to give a rating. You guys can save yours till the end.
You literally ruined this finale for me, and you also ruined my day. Thank you very much. Dude, I had stopped watching at the poker scene. I did not need to see that Jack was on an adventure with Q, and he's going to be a major character in the Star Trek universe moving forward. Dude, I did not need to see that, Starfleet boy. Thanks. So
you know what? I feel that, and I'll stand by your side on that one, Braxton.
Oh my goodness.
So so watching that, I mean, it really puts the show in perspective. This show was about a reunion, but it was also about launching their next big character, and ooh, we got to give them some lineage. How about Picard and Beverly, so you know what, I absolutely hate it. But I did think that this was this was entertaining. You know, I thought it was good. So like um I think I love seeing the Boar Queen like when almost whenever she is portrayed. And so I loved Alice Krieger's performance. You know, I thought that the makeup people and the hair people were MVPs this week. Like I loved how she was like serving like emaciated, skinty realness. I was like, damn. Um, you
What a
know, and like
different what a different Borg Queen from what we're used to, right?
I also loved when she was like, "Oh, Jean-Luc, he's too far gone." Like, "Oh, like I turned him out," you know, and then like you know he like is able to come back to himself like ultimately. So I think that she was like the Boar Queen and Alice Krieger was like my favorite part of this week. You know, I also you know I love. Come on, move out of the way, dude. I love 7 of 9 stuff. So whenever 7 of 9 gets a lot to do, I really loved it. You know, like I love like seeing her like run down the hall. You know, and like her curls were like bouncing. You know, and then she like took the bridge. Like later, she gave that speech. You know, and like they had like focused in on her. You know, and her hair looked perfect. You know, like later, you know, when her and Rafi were on the bridge, and
Yes,
you know,
I
like
did notice that
Rafi
too.
was like looking amazing. Yeah, you know, I thought that the makeup and hair people were totally MVPs this week. I enjoyed this show. I wish that I had stopped watching after the poker game. But I enjoyed like a lot of things about this episode. But I think that my favorites were certainly seeing getting so much seven and seeing Alice Krieger as the War Queen. He's too far gone.
Very nice. What about you, Jesse?
There we go. Okay. No, I really enjoyed it. I think my initial reaction was surprise and then not surprise and then confused and then surprise again. But after rewatching it a little bit more, I kind of understood where it was going. I think all the Crusher stuff I thoroughly enjoyed. My favorite part, of course, was when Geordi tells her that he didn't get to work on the weapons, and so she has to do it manually, and that was the Star Wars moment. I was like,
yeah,
that's freaking Millennium Falcon flying through the hunk of junk in the space, and she's shooting and doing like 10 things at once, and the way they look at her, she's like, a lot's happened in the last 20 years.
That was a great moment.
Died. I loved it. I think I rewound that I don't know how many times. But I also liked, because I've been defending this since the first thing I saw was Troy sensing Riker and rushing over to and just flying in, and I was like, thank you. She did not crash the D. She did not crash the E. So that was a good redemption for her. So I really enjoyed that. And then I also liked the Data part where he was like, I'm going with my gut. Trust me. Because they weren't trusting him, which is something we never ever saw. They always trusted Data. Right. And then all of a sudden they weren't sure. And he's like, you guys need to trust me. So yeah, there was just a lot of different things. And of course, having Beverly shoot that possibly kill Picard and her son was probably not cool. But I mean, the whole needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few scenario played perfectly in that part. So yeah, definitely a lot of action, definitely a lot of things that happened. I did like the end. I drunk Bev is my favorite. Loved it. She drank all that blood wine and she was having the time of her life. And it was nice because you see in the beginning, episode 1, she's alone, she's sad, she's doing everything and now she's with her family again. So it was a good full circle for her, in my opinion. And then her being admiral was just awesome. Did she skip captain, or was she captain? Did they not address?
I think she made captain. I think she had to make captain, but you know, if they did skip captain, then that's fine with me because like, You know.
That's fine. They're like, 20 years. She was off on her own. She was captaining her own ship anyway. It adds up. Oh, and the Seven and Shaw, that got me.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I just saw the Voyager episode when Seven was introduced like 2 days ago. Because I'm rewatching it. I'm watching it for the first time. And so it hit me differently than it probably would have been if I didn't see that episode. So I thought that was great. And I thought seeing Tuvok there. So still getting through it. Just entered season 4. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Right on. How about you, Michelle?
Dare
I
you
love how
ask.
you're laughing.
Don't worry.
How-
No, I'm going to be light here because I'm going to bring it later. But
we're going to go on after this at 9 p.m.
Crusher
live
Combo on our
Crusher
YouTube channel.
On YouTube channel. Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'm a special guest. I'm so excited.
You are. So yeah, that's why we got to wrap this up. So I'm going to try to be quick. I screamed when I heard Chekhov's voice. And I thought it was Chekhov at first. I'm like, is he alive? And like, oh, it's Anton. I said, Anton. I love that so much because I love the reboot. I know people have mixed feelings about it, but I love it. So that was really cool. I love the way they ramped up the intensity, the special effects. That's where the budget went, folks, because it was amazing. Watching the Enterprise D, like when Beverly was like 100%. Carpet bombing, like, and I too love that moment, by the way. But she's always been a good shot. If you watch Galaxy's Child, it's just like surgery, guys. Like it's not a
she's a dead shot.
Yeah,
Beverly
she's a dead.
Crusher's a
We're
dead
seeing
shot.
her do all the things she was amazing at in TNG that got taken from her in the movies, and it's epic. And I loved that. I want to make that very clear. Gates McFadden is a queen. We love Beverly Crusher. We want more Beverly Crusher in our Star Trek because I think she's hilarious. That bar scene is great. And I love the way that her and Geordi were. Like the way Geordi was captaining. And like they both had to be like, well, I guess we got to blow up Jean-Luc and your son. I'm sorry. And Riker and like, oh, well, like no one's really focusing on that was her character arc the whole season. She starts off like locking Jack in a room and she ends with having to kill her own son, which fortunately doesn't happen because Troy's able to sense Riker, right? So, Imzadi.
Imzadi.
Yeah. And I think that there were so many good moments. I mean, kudos to the crew, to everybody who brought this to us. But I will say I think that people are afraid to come out and critique this show. I mean, Braxton's been pretty awesome about it. But like I was, like the Where's Beverly crew, there's a lot of people who are just like, this is like, it's exhilarating. It's fun to watch. But the story, there's some issues. There's some things we've seen before. There's some plot threads that I'm not so sure worked. I don't know if it was worth it to do this to the Picard Beverly friendship, if you will. Like, I'm not even talking about shipping now. I'm going to say this and leave it here. They did not touch all season. And usually in television, that's very intentional. Like, you set that up in order for there to be relief. And I get it. Like, there was a lot that happened 20 years. But to see everyone else, including Worf and Raffi, getting relief and resolution, and Picard and Beverly got like a little smirk in the shuttle at the end. Okay, but I don't think it paid it off. Especially, I speak for those Crusher fans who have DM'd me because they don't want to get on Twitter and hate on this show. But, it's been 35 years and they didn't even touch. And again, it's just odd to me that was the choice. That the way that they started the story off in the beginning, the way they set it up was for that. If they weren't together, like, I honestly was great. They're parenting, co-parenting. Okay.
They seem to be doing
maybe
that,
he's with Laris. Maybe he's not. Like, it's open. I don't even like at this point. I think what gets me most is just they had the touching of the hands between Geordi and Data. Geordi and Data had amazing scenes, which were missing in season 1. Riker and Troy, right? Worf and Raffi. Seven and Raffi didn't really pan out either. So, although they are serving together now, so that should, there's hope for them because of the future. My thing is, this is probably the last time we're going to see these two together, Picard and Beverly, and it just didn't it didn't do it for me there. But I mean, epic episode. But I'll say more on Crusher Combo. Thank you.
Absolutely, looking forward to it, and I'm glad you're here to voice your concern. I do have to say that
My apologies. I don't mean to rain on everybody's parade. I'm not trying to hate.
We all have such strong opinions that you can't rain on them, right? Like we all love our opinions and we're strong about them. Someone else's opinion doesn't like ruin.
Well, and it's not about shipping. It's about the fact that he was more emotional with Riker in this episode, and more emotional about seeing the Enterprise G than he was about Beverly. And that scene with Jack, I really felt like Beverly needed to be brought into that more, and she wasn't.
I have a question
he could
for
have
you.
Mentioned her, and he didn't.
I have a question for you when we dive into it. Remind me if I don't ask you, but it's about a scene on the Enterprise D, and I'd like your take on it. But I want to get into it when we get there.
But on to more positive things.
That was all right, Ken.
Oh boy! So this episode was. I think, like I tweeted right after when I watched it early this morning, I think Terry Matalas clearly stuck the landing with this for sure in a lot of ways. I'll start with a negative. I think that Jack succumbed way too easily, and I think that it didn't serve well to the Jack character, that he was assimilated like that. That I didn't buy. I know that they needed it for purposes of plot, but I think Jack turned way too easy. They had so many, like in the previous episode, they had so many characters to service, and I think they did an amazing job. All of our legacy characters, I thought, had incredible moments. And in this episode, we've talked about this in the past. The women saved the day quite a few times in this episode, which was not really what we saw throughout the course of the season. We saw Beverly with her amazing shooting moments. We saw Troy hearing Riker and taking us, to rescue the folks on the board cube. I also would be remiss if I didn't say, as a TOS fan, the first time I heard, like Michelle was saying, when I heard Chekhov's voice as the opening thing after the credit sequence, I was like, this is amazing. It was also amazing that his message was homage to the president's message in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Do not approach Earth. It was really cool. Just as at the end, the Jack scene was an homage to Kirk unpacking his quarters, his duffel bag in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. I thought that was very, very cool. There were a lot of great homages, and they carried these characters forward in many ways. There is no doubt that, let's get Riker and Worf on many more away missions because they're hysterical together, and the dynamic between Michael Dorn and Jonathan Frakes is just wonderful. That was really fantastic. You had a phaser the whole time. Just that scene was really cool, and swords are fun. Just some really great lines. And again, I think every one of the characters was served well. There were also homages that I think were there, but no one has caught, like the scene where they pull back and back and back, and the Enterprise gets smaller and smaller and smaller to the Borg cube. My thought went to the Corbomite maneuver with the Fesarius and the Enterprise. And I was thinking, that's really cool. I don't know if that was intentional. Knowing Terry Matalas, it very well might have been. And so there's little things like that where I was thinking there's lots of cool things. The reference to Anton and to Anton Yelchin was touching beyond belief. I thought that was just really, really great. And there were all little subtle things through this episode that was really, really strong. And all the 10 endings, I don't know if there were 10, but there were plenty of endings. I got super emotional at the Enterprise G, not because of the Next Generation crew, but as they were pulling back, I was thinking about my Star Trek, which is the original series. And I think that the way they did that and pulling back, there were moments in all of this, with the unfortunate exception of Deep Space Nine, unless you count the changelings. I think they took the Deep Space Nine plots and they didn't do anything really to highlight the Deep Space Nine show. in a lot of ways, which I think is a shame. The reference to the Queen saying, "You left us like this, poisoned," that's a reference to, spoiler Jesse, Star Trek Voyager. And so they referenced everything. And, unless the fact you say the changelings, there wasn't a lot of Deep Space Nine there. Which, again, how are you going to get everything in there? The young characters, seeing them come back, seeing the emotion on their face, Sydney LaForge. The one thing that I did not get until I watched it a second time was the crew of the Titan were on the view screen of the D. I didn't get that until the second watch through. I missed that until the second watch through.
Star Trek 6 homage.
Yeah,
a little
bit of a Star Trek 6 homage.
Also, the two ships side by side.
That's also a Star Trek 6 homage. Yeah. So overall, I thought.
But Text Trek goes into all that stuff. We'll go into. You guys can do that, but I'm just saying. I don't have the screenshots.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of homages to the history of the full history of Star Trek, and the poker scene made a lot of sense. And honestly, if you're bookending the Next Generation, its entire history, Q makes sense, because he bookends the entire thing too. It was a big shock. I'm not sure I would have done it that way. It basically eliminated a lot of the emotional resonance of season 2 by having him come back. But anyway, I've said too much. My rant is over, and that's let's move on to someone else.
You're totally fine. You're up next, Trev. Or I could go to Todd.
No, it's okay. I was just hydrating because I have so much to say. No, I'm kidding. I won't be that verbose. Not as bad as usual, anyway. Every episode I come on and I talk about how positive I felt, and then I talk about my nitpicks. But for me, this was I'm usually very critical of conclusions because the few times I dabble in writing, which is not something I never really share anything that I write. But when I do, I kind of pride myself on wrapping things up neatly. So just as somebody that does it on an amateur level, I'm very, very critical of how things end. And this for me still ended on a pretty positive note. I mean, I have my nitpicks. I feel, again, I've said it a million times, but I feel like just binging the entire series, I'm not gonna have the issues that I had with pacing on some of the other episodes, because this felt like such a nice sort of action-packed conclusion. I love an epilogue, so give me 20-25 minutes of wrapping things up. I'm there for it. There were some things that started for me as nitpicks and then sort of resolved themselves. One of them was Q. It took me aback, and I felt so much about the season 2 death that it was a lot for me to process at first. But after watching it once and then kind of going back and watching it again, I watched it late last night, watching it again this morning, the scene actually made his death more powerful to me, only because if you are an entity or a being that can travel all of space and time and manipulate it, that he chose a particular point in time and a particular person to spend his last moments with. And he chose it at a time, not in the future, not in the past, but at a specific point with Jean-Luc Picard. That for me made it more powerful because he chose who to spend those last moments with.
That's pretty cool.
And they happened to just be in 2400 instead of 2402 or whenever the hell he realized he was going to pass. So that was a huge thing for me. Also, initially, I felt like the Borg had been a little too weakened, but then I realized Endgame and how much, this was Janeway basically kicked the Borg's ass, and then Picard just kind of, did the final Kirk kick into Krug's face at the end of 3. It was that last kick. Picard gave the Borg the last kick. So they were already weakened. They were already diminished. Seeing them in this chaotic state helped me bookend Endgame. Which I felt left things kind of hanging, which was cool to kind of see that resolve. One of my favorite lines in the entire season was not one I was expecting, which was Picard saying to Beverly, "You did everything right." Because we've kind of gone back and forth with her doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, all of that. Him saying that to her kind of goes back to what I said about there was some dialogue between Troy and Riker at one point where I commented and complimented relationship shorthand. I can talk to a doorknob for 6 hours about anything. So I'm the last one to compliment brevity, but it sometimes when you're talking to your partner, you just got to get to the meat of it, and you got to get to the end of it, and you just got to say the last sentence of the argument, the discussion, the conversation, the hug, whatever it's going to be. And in this case, it was just, you did everything right. And the way that it was delivered, and of course the cut to Beverly's face for me was fantastic. I initially nitpicked the cliffhanging of their relationship. I now look at it as kind of like I like that they kind of danced around it. I felt like they were teasing us, which doesn't necessarily bother me, mostly because that relationship was not as important to me. I understand if that relationship is important to you, that could feel a little bit too, that could go from a fun frolic to a tease, and it's not nice. So I get where that feeling comes from. Other than that, I've got a couple of other super nitpicky nitpicks, but I'll just leave you with my biggest one, which is I felt like, even though it was an intentional choice to have Beverly be the one at the tactical console firing the weapons, I feel like it would have been more powerful. And this is, again, I don't mean to criticize anybody's writing, but I just felt like it would have been really, really cool if Geordi had either said transfer tactical control to the command chair or had gone up and stood next to her. Only because, Data was flying the ship, or maneuvering, and the other 3 people on the bridge were all parents or spouses of people that were going to be killed. I didn't necessarily think that somebody who was also a parent and a spouse would be like, yeah, you got this, right, Bev? Like, it felt like he would say, I wouldn't want to push the button to kill Sydney, so I'm going to go push the button if it means, like, or at least make the offer. If Bev was like, no, this is my duty, cool, I don't care. Like, 2 lines of dialogue is all I needed. I needed a back and forth or just a him taking over. I wouldn't want him to take away that moment from a female character, but I would want there to be some acknowledgement that Geordi was the only one who didn't have someone on that ship in peril that was related to him. So I just felt like that was something that would have been really cool had they addressed it differently. That is a super nitpicky nitpick, and overall I feel very positive and enjoyed the ride.
Very nice. Stan.
I said last week that I reserved the right to edit my minor criticisms, and for the most part I have, after seeing these 2 episodes back to back, although I will double down on a few of them. Like I said earlier, I do wish that they had 2 more episodes, some more time, some more budget. Certainly, I've seen some others say that they spent too long in the nebula. Like, I don't agree with that. I wouldn't want to take anything away to make 10 episodes fit. I want to give them more to round out some of the edges. But all that said, I loved it. There were beautiful moments for literally everybody. Some nice wrapping of several plot points, leaving a few open-ended things. I'm going to come down and say I am of the mind that Picard is single. I can accept that he and Laris have broken up, but I do not believe that photo was anything more than 2 loving parents. But I could be wrong, and I'm happy either way. Beverly doesn't need anybody to complete her, first of all. But I loved that ending moment. Like, the Q stuff was kind of cool. I was a little taken aback. Like others have said, I was like, oh wait, but then that line about thinking linearly really salvaged it for me. It does set up a fun game, although the slight criticism that I have that I'll double down on is I do think some stuff with Jack got rushed, and too much of the emphasis has been moved from Jean-Luc Picard, who we have had hundreds of hours with, was the captain of the ship when we met him, to this new character who was kind of a brash, dickish, whatever, and is now like special counselor to the captain. And it reminded me of Voyager season 1, because Voyager season 1, like, they clearly were like, okay, we're going to make a woman captain, but don't worry, Tom Paris is here. This is really his show. Like, season 1 was like Tom Paris centric. And I do worry about that because I want a Captain Seven show, and I want the next generation show. And I like Jack, but I thought like I said, with 2 more episodes, it could have worked a lot better. On my rewatch of some of them, there were small moments that we sort of lost in episodes 7 and 8. Like when he was hitting his head in like episode 3 or 4. Like if we had a little bit more of that strung through, the outburst in episode 9 would have made a little more sense for me. So like that's the only real nitpick I have is like the acting was superb, the writing, like the dialogue was great, but I would have liked more in that story to, I hate to use the word earn, but that's the only one I can think of. Like this ended up being the Jack Picard show, and he's not Jack Picard in some ways. So all of that said, incredible visuals. I loved seeing Seven and Raffi together, whether they're together or not. More Seven, more Raffi, more new is what I want, and hopefully we'll get a green light on Star Trek Legacy as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I was wondering why they wouldn't call it Star Trek Titan, and now I know. Toddy.
So it's always interesting to talk about finales, especially in an era of like this kind of television that we have with the long story arcs, because it's hard to differentiate, or like I suppose like separate this specific episode and these specific events from like the overall story and how it connects to like the rest of it. Do I think this wraps up the show well? Do I think that like they're working their character relationships and their plot points to like correct endings? I think I agree with pretty much everything that was said. Some of it was well handled, some of it wasn't. In terms of this episode specifically, though, I think that like all of the plot that concerns like the action and like the tension that was going on, that didn't really work for me too well. I much prefer to like all of the smaller moments, the more personal moments, and the little victories that we got here and there. Like 7 of 9 being captain of the Enterprise is eternally meaningful to me. I mean, that is just fantastic. It's a huge win. Ironically, this is a show like bookending kind of TNG, and the biggest wins for me were like 7 of 9, which is a Voyager thing, and Raffi reconnecting with her son and being able to like see her granddaughter. That was just so fantastic. What they did with Raffi in this season is overwhelming. I'm all about it. So yeah, and everyone talked about like those little moments that we got with like Data and Geordi, et cetera, et cetera. Those were like big wins for me, more so than the plot. Although I will say that bringing back like the Borg Queen in this manner and having her in this like situation where it's like, you poisoned us, you left us here. I really thought that was pretty interesting. That was like a take on the Borg, or like an idea that used the Borg. That's something I never would have thought of. I never would have gone to that. But I don't like this trope that we have in film and in television, where like when you destroy one central enemy, like everything else deactivates. And so here, all of the Borg crew members, they just deborged. I find that weird. It's like that takes away from like how menacing the Borg truly are. Like the Borg, the whole point of them is if you kill one, there's still a million more that just carry on. That's the hive. So here it's weird. Like once you deactivate one central thing, all of the Borg go away. So that was a bit weird to me.
Well, the Borg, the Borg that were, my impression is that the Borg that were converted by means of transporter weren't fully assimilated. They were only assimilated using this like clever gene thing. And I think the Borg Queen even explained something about like how, well, maybe assimilation's not the thing we're going to do anymore. It's evolution. So she was going to, maybe they weren't far enough into this like, you know, transferring or evolving into a Borg so it could be reversed, you know, like pretty easily. I think they were only they were only Borg for like an hour or two, or like that's
It's
about
kind of
it,
a cheat way to make like the situation seem like insurmountable, and then bring it back. It's this way to make like the whole situation seem so dire, and then you can just take it away. But the show wasn't about that, and the episode wasn't really about that. Like all of these were just vehicles and tools to give us these like moments that we've wanted with these characters. Which brings us to Jack, which is my major complaint. He's useless. There's no point for Jack in this show. You could have done the entire show without the guy. He didn't even
you're so disrespectful to my husband. You're like
perhaps
calling him useless. Wow.
Look, Ed
you could use a
Spilier,
different
he's great.
word. You
he's
can
very,
use a
he's
different
very
word.
handsome. I like the actor.
And
He's
now
a very
you're
good-
objectifying him. Thank you.
He's a very good
Okay.
performer. He's doing
no
a great
saving
job.
this situation.
The character itself, like they could have utilized him in very different ways, but honestly, like they didn't even use him to address like Beverly and Picard. Like we still don't even know what's happening with Beverly and Picard. I don't even care. I'm not even a Beverly fan. I don't care about Beverly and Picard being shipped. But if you're going to make it such a big deal for the show, then do something about it. Address it, right? And so like Jack, ultimately, I feel almost, it's weird. I feel manipulated because Jack is now just the next Picard. Like they're just gonna make Jack the same. No, I don't care. All right, Picard, like just Jack, leave him.
Let's get into the discussion because you brought up a good hot topic.
No,
no.
I will finish.
Finish. Yes, finish.
So that's my major complaint. My major complaint is Jack isn't that useful to me. I think they could have done the same story without him. I think they could have done more with like the two central characters around Jack, like that are concerned by Jack. And that's it. But I do think that the music was fantastic. The visuals are like overwhelmingly fantastic. The sets, like all of the costumes, everyone, like people on Twitter here are like praising the whole thing with like it's fantastic. How good like everyone oh my god, it's fantastic. All of the work that everyone put in, right, to do all these sets and props, and I agree. Like everyone did a fantastic job. It was overwhelming to watch. But yeah, it's just that plot thing. And I got shit for this on Twitter, but I kind of feel like, I don't know, how did I say it? I said, Jack seemingly coming to the realization that he isn't alone because his father is suddenly around kind of disrespects his mother for being there his whole life. And I got shit for that. And
I'm going to give you applause for that, Toddy. Thank you.
It was weird to me. It was it was weird to me. It's like, Beverly. I feel like Beverly should have been in those moments, and it should have been like a family unit. Even if you don't put Picard and Beverly together, that's okay. But have them as like a family unit.
So, can I touch on that for a second?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead. If you're finished, Toddy, we'll go ahead and get right into the discussion.
Go ahead.
We'll leap off of that.
I felt the same way, and then. Ironically, I'm going to invoke my therapist for the second time in this stream. I had a fairly intense session today, and I talked about this event and how important Star Trek is for me. My therapist is aware of my thoughts on Worf and how he reminds me of my father. So this moment, like I had my issues with Jack's run and the plot. And some of the execution, not the acting, not the dialogue, but I felt that way. And then missing having a father in my life, even though my father was actually present. He was there, but not present really. That scene hit for me in a very different way that does not detract from my love of my mother and everything that she gave me. So I just offer up that perspective. I see that perspective and I totally get it, but I don't think he was disrespecting what his mother gave him. I think he was realizing what he had been missing, particularly since he was also one to choose not to engage with Jean-Luc. So it hit very differently for me, wishing that I had that opportunity with a father figure myself.
And I'm gonna.
What you bring up was said on Twitter, and so I have seen that point of view. I think my complaint is more maybe about like the execution or like the message that they were trying to convey. I think it wasn't as clear as maybe they could have made it.
I'm going to echo
Jesse, go
a
ahead.
little bit. Yeah, to Stan. So I was raised by a single mom, did not have a dad. My mom is everything to me. But there was always that part of me of like, where was my dad? Why wasn't he here? And then I ended up being in the same shoes, being a single mom. And I did everything for my daughter. But if she was like, I really want my dad, that's part of her that she was crying out for, you know. Doesn't mean that I did anything wrong. It was just that's how she was feeling. And I think with this part, I agree the execution wasn't done properly because everything was rushed. These last few episodes were just get it done, right? And we even complained a lot about, especially 8. Pointless. There was nothing to 8 that even helped with these final 2 episodes. But I think in this sense, he thought Jean-Luc didn't want a family because he remembered what he saw at the bar. Not really paying attention that Jean-Luc was just putting on a face because he was around cadets, right? He saw what Jean-Luc did to his mom, but there was always that part of him that longed for that father. So in this moment, knowing that Jean-Luc was willing to just, that I'm going to stay with you and die, that helped him bring him out. And even though when he was thinking about all the times the last week and stuff like that, it was nice that they even showed Beverly's face because she was a part of that. That was just the extra, as someone said about I think it was end of 3, with, you know, the kick in the face that Kirk did. That was it. That was the kick in the face that he needed. I got to get out of this. And he went straight to his mom when they got back on the Enterprise. So I think just depending on people's situations, you could read it differently. And as for me, I've been reading it as a parent this entire season when other people are not parents and they see it differently, you know? And so I think that's just how I took it. But I also had to watch it a couple of times to really get that idea in my head.
I had kind of a similar reaction and resolution, but it made me want more about the rejection woven into the story. I felt like this was the perfect resolve to a problem we didn't understand well enough, but had time to weave in. And that's, again, I'm being kind of super nitpicky, but
that was the rush part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get where everybody feels like, because it does feel like, wait, all of a sudden this person wants to hang out with you while you go, and you're like, okay, cool, like now I feel better. But if that's the single person that you were seeking a connection with that didn't want one with you, or you thought didn't want one with you, I can see how them saying it would change things and change perspectives. But it could have, we could have used fewer Red Door flashbacks and more, I feel rejected by my dad. That wasn't so handholdy.
And I think for me, it kind of echoes what happened though with Wesley in TNG. Is at the end of the day, it was always Picard. If you watch Final Mission, he's like, I did it for you, Picard. It was all for you. And he never even mentions his mother. It's really kind of offensive. So I had a hard time. I mean, we had said it on Crusher Convo. Jesse had said it. A mother's love will save him. It was a parent's love and it was good. And I think everybody needs a hug from Picard, right? Everybody wants that dad Picard hug, and that's good. And I think a lot of people need that. A lot of, you have a lot of people who struggle with their fathers maybe, or parents, whatever it is. But for me, I was coming at it just from a woman's perspective of like, okay, I don't know that this kid ever really got why his mother was so sad about his dad. And why and I think like that made him sad. And it would have been nice if Jean-Luc had just been like, when he was talking about his crew and how he found his family and his crew, if he would like, and I found your mother, just give her a mention, even if, because he's obviously let it go with the whole 20 years hit a kid thing, which fans have not let go, which you could see in the chat. So I don't know if this 10 episode arc has really helped Beverly Crusher in that way with the initial storyline. I hope it has, but that's just my coming from the Wesley thing in that perspective, that I kind of still leaning with Toddy, but I appreciate kind of everybody that's trying to fix it too.
And I also want to say that we talked about last week, or I mentioned that fathers in Star Trek has always been a big deal, even right up to Gene and Rod Roddenberry, right? I mean, so the idea, and I lost my dad when I was 18, and there was years before that where he was lost to addiction and stuff like that, and there were lots of times where it would have been, I not to be into a therapy session, but there's a lot of times where I blame myself as the oldest son. I blame myself for things that I should never blame myself for. And when you're a son, that stuff sort of metastasizes in you. And to have a father figure say to a son in this father and son moment, and you saw the performance where he says basically, you were who I never knew I needed, Picard said to Jack. And you are, and I'm staying here with you, just what Jesse was saying, what we're saying. That moment, my mom's been with me my entire life, and it's shame to say somewhat that sometimes you take parents who are with you all the time for granted. They're just there. They're always there, and kids take them for granted. And then you've got this situation that we saw today in this episode where that's what broke Jack out of it, is once again Star Trek dealing with fathers and sons. And I thought it was very powerful. Rushed, yes, they could have done it better. They could have, made all those points. But I thought that was a key moment. I still think that Jack succumbed too easily, and I think that the Jack character has problems. But that moment being, resonated with me for the reasons I just said.
I think perhaps like the final execution of it all, and this is, you could change the world with ifs, I guess, but if Jack had been introduced in season 1 and we have had like this whole Crusher, Jack, Picard thing going on for 3 seasons, maybe they would have like had time to really flesh it out and really deliver on what they were trying to do here.
Right on. What I was going to say is that with Wesley in particular, I think that and actually with Jack, this kind of is true as well. Both Jean-Luc and Beverly were best friends with Jack Crusher. So for the Wesley situation, maybe he was he saw Picard as the closest male figure that was near his actual dad that could kind of maybe impart some of that, onto, because when you're friends, you start to emulate each other and things like that. And so maybe that's why he was drawn to Picard. With Jack, it's the other thing which is well, they named me after my mom named me after Jack Crusher. So there's this instant, at least as a viewer, there was this instant thing of oh, this must be weird for Jean-Luc and also for Jack, that, he's named after a dead best friend. So I thought about that. Michelle, the question I had for you is when Jean-Luc, Riker, and Worf are heading to the Borg cube, and he says, I'm honored to serve with you. He kind of takes a moment and he looks at Beverly, and she's just consumed in the thing. What were your thoughts about that moment where Jean-Luc was trying to connect for a second, and then they just keep missing each other? They both have had these moments, I feel like,
it's
throughout
just the summary of their entire relationship. This is just what it is for them. And it's frustrating, honestly, because they didn't have to do it that way, I don't think.
I don't know. I think, well, yeah, we could talk about
and
that.
The thing is not that moment. The thing is not that moment. It's that it built to nowhere. And it didn't have to build to a relationship. But Jean-Luc was crying to Riker on the Borg ship. Crying. And he did not emote to any kind of level where I believed he was Riker and Beverly, Data and Beverly. It's just never been there since TNG. They just don't play it. And it's weird because Gates is playing it, but I feel like he's not. It's just, it's very kind of not being given to us. You can't emote to Beverly because you're angry with her about things or whatever. And it just, that's my big hang up with this whole season, is that they skipped over the part that we should have seen, whether it was a handhold or a hug. Or how many times has he hugged Riker or hugged Data or said, I can't, he's done this. I'm not talking about just romance. I'm talking about real meaningful friendship. And if you want to see a friendship come back together after being split up for a long time, just look at Geordi and Data. And there wasn't that tension there, but you didn't have the resolution to the fight really, except you were right. And that's what we have to sit with, is just that. There was nothing else. And listen, if you don't care about those two, like their relationship, again, not necessarily a ship, but their friendship even, then it doesn't bother you. But for me, yeah, that bothered me. So Hal.
Right on. Well, sorry, not right on. Guys, let's switch over back to the Titan and Space Dock with our last few minutes here on the stream, because I am gonna end at 8:30. I promise. But let's go back to 7 and everything that's going on over there. Toddy, you were talking about how lovely it was for you as a fan of Voyager and that character to see her get the Enterprise. So let's just say we do get the Star Trek Legacy show. Like, what are your hopes for a show like that with 7 in command, and like kind of the setup that they gave us with the backdoor pilot?
Rewriting the book, is that what Shaw said? No, I think it would be interesting, because we would be boldly going into the 25th century, though it is the present for me in Star Trek. It is a new century. Having Seven and Rafi there, which they're two people that deeply believe in the ideals of the Federation and of Starfleet, but seem to kind of like they want to do things in their own way. They're kind of Mariner kind of type characters in a way, and I think it's interesting that the show would maybe explore that. I would like to see that. I would like to see Seven and Rafi and like a bunch of new, younger characters. We've already got like the little Forges going and paving the way and writing a new chapter in like what Starfleet is. And it would be very bold, but it would be interesting to start reconsidering the ideas of like non-intervention and like the Prime Directive and all of that stuff, especially considering I think Star Trek now, like in the real world for almost 60 years, like we've started questioning like the Prime Directive and really talking about like the ethical concerns with like what Starfleet has established as being like some of those principal ideals. And so just to like rewrite the book and have like Seven and Rafi do that would be like very meaningful aboard like an Enterprise. That would be amazing to me.
The Enterprise G, as a matter of fact.
And then just like what we got, to bring it back to this episode, what we got and what we saw of that, like what they're capable of in this episode, it was good. I think that like this show kind of soft piloted what they could do with it. They showed us that these characters are great. They have great the actors have great chemistry. The characters work well on the bridge. They were killing it out there. I do feel like there should have been more ships, though. I feel like having just the younger officers become the Borg leaves the more experimented officers to run Starfleet. And I feel like some of the more like experienced officers should have been able to take over more ships. There were 265 ships, and there was only one they managed to like bring back. But anyway,
this is where missing out on Seven being a former Borg, like completely dropping that. If her like nanoprobes were key to her ability to secure a deck or something, like it would have. Like they lost too much of Voyager 7 in Star Trek Picard for my taste, and I totally agree, Toddy. Like more of those ships would have been retaken by some experienced officers. However, as I say that, I'm remembering a tweet that went much more aggressive than I intended it to. Ro Laren did weed out a lot of potential officers who would have made it even more difficult to take over. So, the Titan is a 250 person starship. Ro got it down to 50. Those other ships are 500 to 1,000, and all of them are on those ships. I don't know. I'm making excuses for something I didn't want anyway.
Yeah,
Also,
and
on the Seven,
more Seven.
On the Seven front, there's a cool thing that I didn't really recognize until shortly before this conversation, which was her basically becoming Captain Janeway. because now there is this very young Borg associated person on her ship. She's the captain of a starship. She's going to be mentoring this person through all of his I don't quite understand and fit into Starfleet kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm not a huge Jack fan. I no disrespect to your husband, Sohail. But I do think there's a lot of there's a lot of potential for the character if they chose to include him in something like that. But I do think it was cool to see the 7 arc, bring her full circle to being Janeway.
The Borg Queen did curse Jack, so she did say like you're gonna be lonely and whatever and this and that, and of course he defies her, but she might know something about his physiology that he doesn't, or like the way that he's, so there might be some really cool things there. I wanted to ask Braxton because I know he's a Voyager fan too. Braxton, your thoughts on 7, the Enterprise G, and a possible legacy show?
7 of 9 is my favorite character in all of Star Trek. I really hope that she doesn't get a show and become a captain, and then Jack Crusher is like hijacks her damn show. That is what I really hope. Like, I don't know. It was so disappointing to me. Like when when they were in the shuttle, Beverly, Picard, and Jack, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like you've been like fast tracked," and all I thought was like, "Damn, white privilege," and and then like
I love that he called out nepotism.
It's Picard.
And then, but he actually called out his nepotism.
There's a little bit of self-awareness there, just a little bit.
And then 7 of 9 like, 7 of 9 is like, oh yeah, like you don't have a job, you're just like the special person who's just gonna.
Jack was a doctor, wasn't he? A doctor?
I think he was a doctor.
Yeah.
Why was he like, I'll do communications,
languages,
maybe science, but not really my thing. Not really your thing. You were a doctor.
But he was wearing the command red, and I was
Why?
What's going on here?
I'm glad to see that there's some agreement in this space because I haven't seen it on Twitter. And like, I call this bullshit out. Like, if Ed Spaliers was not a white man, he is the most Kirk-like character we've had since the most Kirk-like character we've had, Kirk-like captain we have since Kirk, and that is Michael Burnham. You cannot tell me very Kirk-like. And so like the Mary Sue of it all, and the like, why is she always this? Why is she so emotional? And not seeing that for Jack, like, gee, I wonder what the key differences in these two characters might be. That
Jack deserves nothing. He's just
I like Jack. I like
but we're
Jack.
Not. Look, I don't think
Jack
we're gonna get a Jack focus on a legacy show. I think it will be a 7 of 9 focus, right? Don't you guys?
I don't know. I think it's gonna be.
I hope so. And also, dude. So another thing that struck me, dude, like what is up with like mass murderers being so aggrieved? Like, the book when she was like, "Oh yeah, you like left me, and like I was like isolated and like starving and lonely with like nobody to assimilate." It's like, what? Like you just like kill and assimilate like millions upon people, millions of people. So like the fact that like there was like strong like retribution, you shouldn't be surprised by that. Like it's okay.
Just another woman character waiting for a man to come fix everything.
The changeling like was also aggrieved as well, and like they did terrible things, like mass murderers aggrieved. That was another thing that stuck out to me about this show.
Although I will say the idea of the Borg saying Starfleet effed with us, and the changelings saying Starfleet effed with us, let's go after them together. I thought that was an interesting concept. But I agree with you, Braxton. It's like, what? There's no sympathy here. Whatever. Just blow them up and get out.
That's another thing that I thought if they had more episodes, right? Like they Amanda Plummer did such an incredible job, and then they literally blew her out an airlock and were like, okay, we're done with you because we want to talk about the Borg now.
Right.
Like that separation would have worked for me if there was more. Like we got some decent resolution, and I like that it was Beverly that solved the problem, but like seeing the Borg turn on the changelings, because like they're not going to be assimilated with this virus, so like that piece was just missing. It's like they used a plot device from Deep Space Nine and then dropped it immediately. So like more time to explore that would have been great. And Ken, I'm so sorry, I totally
no, you're absolutely right. And Amanda Plummer was as much as I love Alice Krieger as the Borg Queen, Amanda Plummer was the much better villain in this series, I thought.
Stan, going back to you for a second because we're about out of time. You wanted to talk about your Ro lives theory or idea.
Oh yeah, Terry said in an interview that because of budget and whatnot, there were a bunch of things that they just couldn't do, including Catherine Janeway. They wanted in here, Harry Kim possibly. They wanted to have Ro and Tuvok saved from the same brig, or he called it a dungeon on the Intrepid. So in my mind, Ro lives. Ro lives.
Ro lives. All right. Yay. I'd rather Elizabeth Shelby be alive. I liked Ro's death.
I think she does too. I believe that Shelby was a changeling. Yes, everybody lives.
But apparently they didn't.
that was the thing that I was kind of hoping for. Like if they had done a little bit, if they had done the Borg need to turn on their changeling henchmen to close this out, because the changeling, like I said, the changelings weren't going to just like leave them alone after that, right? Or maybe they would. But if they had turned on a changeling Shelby, that could have been cool, because then it would be like, well, Shelby is still alive somewhere.
In the last few minutes, let's go back to a round robin format and just everyone kind of give your final thoughts and any subject we didn't touch upon that you just want to kind of give like a thought about. And then feel free to give your sensical or nonsensical ratings. Mine is, obviously I gave it, what did I say? 50 out of 10 today?
Yep.
500 infinity. So that's mine. Obviously there's a lot more discussion to have, which is why I want to end now, because we want to make room for Crusher Convo. And then the Salon tonight, which airs at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. What time is that in California? That's 7:30 p.m., right?
7:30 p.m.
Nice.
Set your intentions now.
Set your intentions now. So let's go in the opposite direction. Toddy, why don't you start this time, and then we'll go all the way back around to Braxton. And Braxton, don't you dare come for my husband in the final statement. I swear I'll catch you. No, I'm just kidding. Do what you want. Sorry, go Toddy.
Are these thoughts on the episode or thoughts on the season?
Anything you want. This is it. This is the Picard discussion.
This is it. This is the Picard discussion.
This is the end, my friend.
This is the end. You know what? To lament one final thing that we didn't get, I would have enjoyed seeing signatures, little autographs on screen there.
I am with you on that, but I actually like that they didn't do it. I'm actually kind of pleased that that's not a T. It's a T. It's not their thing. Their thing was the poker table.
The Avengers did it. Yeah. They copied us. Anyway. So I think,
which is why they didn't do it, because the Avengers did it.
Perhaps. No, overall, I think I might have more complaints than others here about how plot turns out, and I get very nitpicky about certain things. But
we all do. It's like fun. Yeah, it's fun to find these things and also we have attachments to characters. I'm gonna stop interrupting you. Sorry, carry on.
No, but I did enjoy. I think it's not the best episode of the season, and I think it had a lot to do. And it was difficult to do as much as it wanted to do in the time that it had. So that's the excuse that I'll find this episode. That doesn't make it the best episode, I think, of the season. But the season overall was it's an enjoyable experience, and it's something that I think as a Star Trek fan I will cherish. And in 50 years, when I'm going back to these characters and re-exploring the Next Generation and what we call the Berman era, this is a great kind of bookend to that kind of period and stuff. Yes, I think now it is time for Deep Space Nine to get its time in the limelight, because we're not anyway. But yeah, no, it's great. I would give this episode maybe a 7 out of 10.
And what do you give the whole series Picard if you were to rate it?
I don't know that. The
Okay,
whole
think about
series Picard or just season 3? Because that's
season 3. Sorry, just season 3.
that's a whole different thing. I mean, I could actually literally calculate it.
No,
for you
don't
if
do
you
it. Just
wanted,
it was supposed to just come from your gut.
but
I
no,
wanted
no,
your data reaction.
no. I would probably give it a 7. Same thing. It's
Okay.
it's a fine season. It has issues, or I have issues with it rather, but I enjoyed it, and I acknowledge that it is a season that comes much more from like an emotional perspective than it does kind of like a plot one or like a scientific one. You know, it's more about like ending these character stories or introducing the next generation.
Right on. Stan.
I'm gonna give it a 9.99. I loved it. I thought it wrapped things up beautifully. I definitely wanted more. I talked about my thoughts on Jack. I want more there because I want to love it more than I did. And Ed Speleers is fantastic, and the dialogue was fantastic. I wanted more. It left me wanting more, so I think it did its job. 2 pieces I haven't touched on yet. The dialogue for Shaw's report was incredible. I loved the metaphor of rule breaking. Well, maybe those rules were already broken to begin with. I love
I love
her
that
writing
line
her
too.
own book. I thought that was beautiful. I also loved the humor this season. Worf and Riker in particular. Data. See, watching it with people, I normally just watch it alone at midnight in my apartment, right? Watching it with other people and having other people find the same things funny, like, and even subtle things, the applause, like I'm gonna, others have touched on like the touch points of Trek, watching this with other people and having others join me in applauding the Enterprise D doing something cool. I remember watching Next Generation be like, why aren't they moving? Like the ship could fire more than once, right? Like what's happening here? And I'm glad that they had enough budget to give us a cool battle. I just loved it. The humor was incredible. And I will make it a threesome is a line that I am looking forward to find many varied uses for in my life moving forward. That's all I'll say. And I will conclude by saying I am even more firm in my opinion that season 1 and season 2 are essential for season 3 to hit the way it did. Things I liked and didn't like aside, the cue of it all, the positronicness of it all, like wherever you land on the choices of all of these seasons, as a collective unit, just incredible. Loved it.
Very nice, Trev.
9.5 heavy ass Klingon swords out of 10.
With phasers inside of them.
One of my biggest critiques has been Jack, but I also like to be fair with my criticism. So one thing that I've seen a lot online, and I've seen a couple times in the chat, how did Jack become an ensign in 1 year? Modern day military officers don't have to attend the academy for 4 years in order to become officers. They can attend officer training after being degreed people. So you attend the university, which he did, and we're pretty sure he was a physician, but I'm now questioning whether that was ever in dialogue. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, was he just stealing the stuff for his mom to use? Like, I don't know. But now I'll find out when I binge the whole thing.
He actively treated people.
Yeah, it's
which doesn't necessarily mean that he was a physician. This could be very scary for
come on, if you're trained by Beverly Crusher, you're the best fucking doctor.
One would think you'd be one by default.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't know what the malpractice laws are in the 25th century, but I'm sure we'll find out eventually. But very much looking forward to whatever this could spin off, particularly with not only a potential series, but with these movies announced where we're going to do these little, maybe every 2 years films like Section 31. The potential is just overwhelming, with all, maybe only one of these characters. It would just be really, really cool to see what happens next. So I as much as I enjoy being critical of the show as a whole and sort of nitpicking it apart, I never wanted to appear that I'm not grateful, because in my opinion, more Trek is better Trek. And so I'm grateful to everyone that made it possible for me to be able to watch this and talk about it.
Very nice. Ken.
So I think, from a point of view of Star Trek as a whole, I think that this season was very, very strong. There's a lot of people who are saying, is it the best season of Star Trek ever? That's another conversation for another day, but I say it is one of the best seasons of Star Trek ever, season 3, in a lot of ways. Did it hold up to the ideals of Star Trek that, we've known for years? I think that the concept of family and connection, the concept of recovering from, great adversity, challenges, beating great adversity, and understanding, sort of the understanding of the human adventure and how the human adventure continues. I think that this episode hit a lot of those big Star Trek notes. This season hit a lot of the big Star Trek notes. I do think that this was a grandiose story that could have probably been 12, 15 episodes, and they rushed it in 10 episodes. And because they rushed it in 10 episodes, they did some shortcuts that, I thought, for what it was, for what they had, I think they did a great job. The idea that this was a backdoor pilot, I think they sort of got lost in that a little bit towards the end of this episode, sort of doing this grand setup for what's next. And, the next generation legacy characters almost took a back seat towards the end of this. I love the poker stuff. I think overall, I loved the thing I loved the most, which no one has mentioned. And, I want to do some research, is I thought I heard Majel Barrett as the computer say things that she had never said before.
Oh, really?
So, which is interesting. Yeah.
Oh.
So they recreated her voice. I mean, some of that stuff where, if you go back and listen to her lines, I don't, the lines about, Captain Picard taking command again, that was in the last week's episode. That was something that was said before. Some of the stuff that she said in this episode, I don't think was said before. So they did some,
or it
AI,
could be a conglomeration of
AI work. Yeah.
At least it wasn't Drake or Kanye West.
Yeah.
Like an AI.
Right. So I thought that was really cool. And I loved when Riker, Jonathan Frakes, said, "I miss that voice." I thought that was a nice touch.
That was a nice to her.
So, that there's so many nice touches to this, and a salute to the entire history of Star Trek. And as a TOS fan, I appreciated it very much. So I will give it 9 Beverly strafing runs out of 10. And Beverly kicking ass. Like I said, she kicked ass at the beginning and she kicked ass at the end. Beverly Crusher. That's really cool. And the season as a whole, I would probably give maybe a 7.5 overall. 7.5 Enterprises D, not bloody A, B, C, E, F, or G, but D.
Or J.
Or J, right.
Oh, J. Don't get me started on the J. Michelle, you're up.
Yeah, so it was quite a ride. It was amazing. I got to see the premiere on the big screen. So, seeing Beverly Crusher kick ass, honestly, we've seen it in little doses, right? I think everything we saw from Beverly Crusher was a natural growth of her character, which was good. Nothing felt out of character for me, except maybe the hiding the kid part. And that is what I'm worried about most for her legacy. Like, now this is the new thing the fans are going to hold over her, even though Picard said it was fine. So I don't look forward to that. But I do think that overall, like, as I can see where I'm so happy for my fellow TNG fans that are happy with this season. Like, we got a ton. We got the Enterprise D back. We got so much back. And we got really great character moments. I love the humor this season. Beverly's line, Jesse mentioned it, where she was just like, a lot happened in 25 years. Like, yeah, I want to see that. Like, give Gates McFadden more than just like sad cry face for 10 episodes. I mean, she must have had such a headache doing the show. Every scene, she was near tears. She acted. I mean, give Gates an Emmy. That's what I say about this season. Give Gates McFadden an Emmy. And maybe, I doubt Patrick Stewart will come back, but he can be the love interest on the side, or maybe him and Laris, who said maybe, and that makes it 3. Like I don't know, or Beverly and Laris can be kicking butt somewhere. I don't know, but I liked.
Is this the threesome you talk about?
Yeah, Star Trek Picard. I'm not making any insinuations. I'm just, whatever. But Star Trek Picard as a whole kind of disappointed me, because the point was Jean-Luc was kind of supposed to be coming. I mean, I think it's, for most fans it's fine, but for me, he never resolved the relationship I really wanted him to resolve. It's left up in the air, one way or the other, like just to kind of screw Picard fans over again. I don't know, like, oh, they didn't have time, they didn't, like, whatever, to resolve it. Just, I felt like there needed some resolving to be done that was not done in that particular relationship. But love the crew, love seeing them back together again. I don't know if I would be super. I'll maybe give it a. Obviously, I'm a Star Trek fan, so I'm probably gonna watch if they do a spinoff. But fool me, it's kind of like, how long? I want to see Gates McFadden back in Star Trek. So that's
how Brian must suffer occurs. It's Michelle must suffer is the next.
It seriously happens every time I ship some. Like all my ships are just never. So I should just stop. And
Beverly's going to recur in the new show in this kind of Luoxana role kind of thing in the new show.
Oh, if they turn her into Luoxana Troy, I'm going to have big problems. Like,
come on.
It's not. I mean, she's like, did anybody check in on her mental health? We got Data over there talking to Troy. I'm like, this woman just almost killed her son to save the universe. Like, can we unpack that a little bit? She get a little emotional inner life depth like Riker was getting this season? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh and not being grateful for what we've been given with Beverly, but just saying.
That's how badass she is. All she needed was a martini.
Yeah, I don't know why no one had Romulan ale. No one invited her to the bar. That would have just been really the answer to the entire season.
What was your rating? I missed it.
I'm still, I guess 7.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Of 9.
Jesse, 7 of 9.
Jesse, and then if you have to go start your show, feel free. But I think we'll be done after you and Braxton. So stick around if you like.
Yeah, I'm gonna hightail out of here after I'm done. But I did want to answer a question that Stan had for me in the green room. What was that picture that Jack had?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So this is what I came up with. It's dumb. It's stupid. But I said that Beverly was winning an award and Jean-Luc was her date and they were on Earth.
Oh, I love that.
When they're on the Enterprise D. So
biggest troll for Picrusher fans. Thanks for the old photo from the television premiere in 1988. I guess.
Again, my thing is I shipped Han and Leia, and look how that happened. So I'll take what I can get. But the thing is that was very bad. Yeah. But I definitely think overall, as the season, it was rushed. If we did have all 3 seasons with Jack, it would have been way better. All different seasons are just kind of on their own, and so that's why it doesn't really mesh very well. So that's like my biggest criticism. It was rushed. They didn't have these really good moments that they could have had because they were just trying to get it done. If we had 13 episodes, it would have been probably far better. But I mean, I've already watched them 1 through 10 because I couldn't sleep. So I'm on like 3 cups of coffee right now, and it's fantastic when it's all bookend like it is. When we're getting it separated, It was hard. But when you watch them 1 through 10, it's just one full story. 8, I'm still, but everything else, everything else is fine. And of course, I enjoy all the Beverly stuff. I'm super grateful that I got to experience this because, as everyone knows, I just got into the Trekverse last year. And so watching these characters come back, watched it with my husband who remembers Encounter at Farpoint at 4 years old and seeing Q. experiencing that with him has been very, very humbling, I guess. And I was sad to see it end. And so I want more Crusher. Picard can jump in here and there, but Crusher is kind of who I'm more wanting to see. But I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 Bev shooting spore cubes.
Woohoo! Nice.
That's what I'm going to give it.
We'll see you in a few minutes on the Crusher Convo,
So-
everyone. And Cake is Eternal. Put the link in the chat. So if you guys go to that link, you can set a notification and we'll continue the
I'm
conversation.
gonna head out
over
as
there.
well. But thank you so much for having us on this.
Guys,
Thank
I just
you.
wanna-
Bye,
before you
guys.
both leave, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming to my show and contributing to it. So thank you so much for this whole.
No,
this
thank
whole
you.
season.
We
So-
appreciate
it
all
so
right.
It's been fun.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Braxton.
7 out of 10. Starfleet Boy, I was prepared to give this a 10 out of 10.
Ooh,
But then
and then
you
I showed you that
encouraged me.
scene.
You encouraged me to watch the post credits,
Wow.
and it ruined it. So Starfleet Boy,
I'm
all
so sorry,
3
Braxton.
points.
Your
3 full
Oh
points.
my god, he
Wow.
took 3 points off because of me. Oh my god,
Because of Q.
Because of Jack. It's Jack. It's not Q. It's Jack, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
It's the Jack folk. It's ending with Jack that he didn't like.
yes.
But I
Jack
loved it.
Jack at everything, dude.
That's his name anyway.
Guys,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me. I know that there's so much more to talk about, but that's why there's 2 other conversations going on. There's the Crusher Convo and then the Salon. The Salon is not recorded, and sometimes I'm drunk on the Salon. I don't know about tonight. Maybe
Sometimes.
we'll see. So...
I intend to be as well, Sohail, so don't worry about it.
Okay, good. So...
Oh my.
I have
Oh my.
several rants to go on, but
But also, thank you to
Stepmom
our-
Laris. That's where I want to end it. Stepmom
Mom
Laris.
Laris.
Yep.
Well, guys, this has been a real pleasure. These 10 weeks talking about Star Trek Picard. I think Toddy and I started it, just the 2 of us, like on the first episode, if I'm not mistaken, and it grew and grew, and it grew into
Well,
this wonderful thing. It's really amazing, and I just want to say that it's been a real thrill talking about Picard and deconstructing it and picking it apart and talking
Are
about
you
it.
going on
with-
hiatus now?
Yes, for the next 8 weeks, there will only be Saturday streams. So we will continue to talk about the animated series. And then when the animated series is over, we will go and start our journey into Deep Space Nine. That's 7 seasons of Star Deep Space
Oh my
Nine. So
gosh, really?
sign up now if you want to be on those shows. And
I do.
And
I
to
want to
the
be on
au-
every Kira-centric episode.
you got it. And
Yeah,
so,
I can do it
audience,
too.
thank you.
Yeah, I want
also
to be on
for joining-
duets. Everyone on duets. 10 out of 10.
Wow, everyone's claiming it. So, audience, thank you for tuning in. We had like a nice bunch of folks viewing on Twitter as well and Facebook. So, thank you so much for coming back week to week. And I know you guys come back for these guys because I'm kind of boring. But live long and
Hush,
prosper.
No. Don't you dare end it on that note.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Well,
I'm awesome. I'm
you-
made of awesome, in fact.
You have provided us an incredible space with one of the
Sorry.
highlights of my week. Thank you.
Aw,
Don't
So Hel-
sell yourself short. This has been
So
an
Hel-
incredible addition to my life.
It's an honor
thank
for
you.
us to be here.
So you've created a
Indeed.
spin-off, for crying out loud.
Well, I appreciate everyone. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Whoops.